Welcome to Putting It Together, the podcast that goes through the entire body of work of Stephen Sondheim, show by show and song by song. My name is Kyle Marshall, your self-described Sondheim expert. A big welcome to our new mini-series on the songs of Dick Tracy. As is described in this episode that you're about to listen to, this is a bit of an oddity, I would say, when it comes to Sondheim's output. Not that he was ever an easy one to pin down as far as what the next subject matter was going to be in the shows that he was a part of. But an ultra-colorful comic book character come to life doesn't necessarily scream Stephen Sondheim, especially because he didn't do a whole lot of film musicals. Although, let's just put an asterisk there. This really isn't a musical. This is a point that I'm going to reiterate again and again through this very short mini-series. While there is musical theater elements to these songs, this is not a traditional musical in that sense. These are all songs that are being sung diegetically. These are all songs that are kind of window dressing as far as setting a mood, setting a tone to the film, oftentimes just being heard for short little snippets. They're not revealing these deep emotions about the characters or revealing new information that we didn't know before. Although I say all that with the knowledge that there is maybe a bit more depth to these lyrics than you might suspect at first. Anyways, we are going to start off our season here talking about the song More. I am going in the order that the songs show up in the book Look, I Made a Hat, the book that Sondheim came out with his full completed lyrics at the time that they were published. I wish I could tell you why they are in the order they're in, but I really can't. They are not in the order that they show up in the film, but perhaps maybe this is the order that he finished writing them in. I don't know. The quick answer is that I don't know, but we're going in the order that they are in the book. So that means that we're going to talk about More. First, one thing I just want to mention before we jump into this week's episode is that if you have not seen the movie Dick Tracy, I please encourage you to do so. Within our conversation, even though I give ample amounts of warning, there are going to be spoilers. So expect spoilers for this movie. You have now been warned. So go and watch the movie first. Come back and listen to these episodes about the songs of Dick Tracy, and then you won't have to worry about being spoiled if you think that there's things that you can be spoiled about.
Once upon a time, I had plenty of nothing, which was fine with me because I had...
Cooper Williams, thank you so much for being here on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here across the world, really.
It is, yes. I've had a handful of people from Australia on the podcast here before, and it's always a bit of a struggle to try and figure out what time to do it. Yeah, we made the time. We got it. We got time zones figured out. This is your first time being here on the show, so I want to start general here and ask you how you first got into musical theater.
So I sort of, relatively speaking, got into musicals pretty late. I'd always watched Grease, and I'd grew up on the Elvis movies and stuff like that with my parents. But I did my first musical when I was 16 or 17. So in terms of, especially a lot of other people in my course, it was Addams Family. So I played Gomez in that, which was really fun. But I'd always been a music kid, as with a lot of people. So I've been playing piano, as you can see. I'm in a practice room at university right now.
Mm-hmm.
I've been playing piano for as long as I can remember. And then I picked up the trumpet, which is what I did my Bachelor of Music in at the Queensland Conservatorium for the last 3 years. And I really liked, so I played for the musicals there. We played 42nd Street, and I really loved it. And I'd been doing some acting and dancing and stuff on the side because I was like, I really enjoy doing musicals. And then I decided that I was like, oh, I really love them so much. I'm just going to go study it and see what happens. So I applied, did some auditions, and I got into WAPA, which is where I'm at now. So yeah, there's a few grads that I think I mentioned. So there's Hugh Jackman, who's off doing lots of different things.
Ever heard of him?
Yeah. Really. Eddie Perfect, who's I think 2001 graduate, and he's one of the writers on Beetlejuice, the musical. And we're actually really fortunate for our year and the year above us. So I'm first year it's a 3-year course, so there's first, second, third years. And so essentially the third years have the main musical of the year. And for next year, we've got a commission from the Minderoo Foundation, which is a foundation that funds a lot of original Australian projects. They're funding a musical written by Eddie Perfect about this thing that we have in Australia called the Tivoli Circuit, which people may or may not have heard of, which is going to be really cool. I think it's around November, December next year. They're putting it on at the Heath Ledger Theatre here in Perth.
Just because I can't leave this juicy tidbit hanging, what is that? Like, what is the
Tivoli circuit?
Did you just say?
Yeah, so it's
Tivoli.
I mean, I have just finished listening to the Gypsy segment of this podcast, so it's very similar to the vaudeville in America, but the Australian version.
Okay.
So essentially, it's just like different acts would come through, like there'd be people doing juggling, sword swallowing, and then training their dogs to do and stuff, dancing, singing, anything you can imagine. And then it went through early like 20th century, bit of late 19th, and then sort of died out with the arrival of TVs. So don't have too much of it anymore.
Right.
But it's essentially about a group. I won't spoil too much, but it's about a group called the 11 Kevins and the misadventures of these 11 Kevins.
I realize that you just mentioned that you're here in your first year. Even in this first year, is there something that has, I don't know, like surprised you, or like, oh, I would never have put this together had I not come to school to study this?
Yeah, I think because especially in my like personal training, I've done things quite separately. So I had my singing teacher, which I went to. I did some like acting classes, and then I did dancing. But coming to a school, like we're doing all these training like every single day. We're here like 9 to 5 basically, and we're doing this class and this class and this class. And you realize what things like cross over and what things like you sort of have to watch, especially between like dance and singing. But then also acting is applied to everything. So it's like, I never really thought about that too much before, is how much, especially the acting, you want to incorporate and into all these different pieces of the puzzle, I guess. So like a lot of it for us is, well, not a lot of it, but a big thing is like having tension in your body. So dancing, you want tension to help you do with like a million turns. Not that I can do that many turns, but then you're singing and you don't want to have any tension. So it's like balancing that, especially when you're doing like a dancing musical or something like that, which is somewhat what happens in Dick Tracy. So it's like, it's just impressive, especially when you're looking at
right.
You're like, well, that's how you do it.
You know, not to get too far, I guess not to get too ahead of ourselves is really what I'm trying to say here. Not to get too ahead of ourselves, but like, I am somewhat surprised that Dick Tracy has not been attempted to be made into a stage musical. Because, you know, you have the songs there already. I mean, Sondheim isn't around anymore to do any more or anything like that, but you could do stuff from the time or like bring in other songs that it's referencing and sort of thing. Anyways, I'm just surprised that they haven't attempted it. Although I have a feeling I know why, which is the whole Warren Beatty of it all, which we'll get through this entire series about the weirdness of the rights that this property holds. But anyways, I'd love to see Dick Tracy on stage is really what I'm trying to say. Yeah,
and absolutely, especially like all the like the cartoony sets that they used in the movie. I think that'd look sick on stage, I reckon.
Oh yeah, it'd look great.
I don't know, maybe a project for the future.
Because this is a Stephen Sondheim podcast, I do need to ask you the first time you were introduced to Stephen Sondheim. The music, I'm assuming you never met the man.
I love this question. No, unfortunately, I have not. Very similar to a lot of your other listeners, my first foray was Into the Woods. So my singing teacher back in high school, so probably around the same time I did Addams Family, so grade 11, she gave me a piece called Giants in the Sky. And I was like, what is this? Like, what is this ridiculously hard chromatic music that's not very much not easy? And then she like sort of just pushed me to like watch all the stuff. So I first watched the movie and was a little bit confused because she had mentioned to me that there was like, especially the like I had obviously when you look at the costumes and stuff of the original production, you can see it a little bit more, but the undertones of Into the Woods. And I was like, I didn't see any of that. She's like, did you watch the movie? I was like, yeah. She's like, yeah, go watch the musical, you idiot. I was like, okay. And so then I watched the
she pushed you
Broadway
down
cast,
and made fun of you. Yeah.
And I was like, basically, no, she was lovely. I love her name's Irene Utley. Anyone in Brisbane may know her. She's a classical singer, so opera. But then so I watched the original Broadway cast and I was like, okay, this makes sense. And I loved it. I think I watched it probably 3 or 4 times just to kind of get used to it. Because I mean, I hadn't really heard anything like that. And I come from more like classical and a bit of jazz, big band music. It has got like bits of this, bits of
Mhm.
that, but put it in such a way that's just like it tells the story so well. And sometimes, yeah, now definitely 100% one of my favorite writers to sing their music, really.
Into the Woods, I guess, is your introduction to Stephen Sondheim, and you love singing him. What are some of the other songs that you enjoy singing?
Well, my two favorite Sondheims are probably Company and then Sunday in the Park.
Oh, nice.
So, and they're two of the roles that I would love to do. Probably really any of those ones, but especially Being Alive, which is the end of the song of Company, and then really anything from Sunday in the Park. But this is going to be a really weird one, but like the dog song or the Day Off song, where it like starts
Yeah, yeah,
barking.
yeah.
I really want to do that just
Sure, sure.
because it's so random and so fun.
I can tell you haven't gotten to that episode yet because I disparaged the dog song a little bit on the podcast. But
No, spoiler alert.
I love Sunday in the Park with George, and it's just that small section I can't stand. Are you a tenor? Or like, is that what your vocal range is?
Yes. Yeah. I can't
Okay.
sing too low, so I get to some of the songs, especially like in his early work, I'm like, ugh. But anything up high, especially, that's
Yeah,
it's a very good
yeah.
one.
Super low.
Um,
We are here to talk about Dick Tracy, this somewhat, I will say it, it's a bit of an oddity, I would say, in Sondheim's career, even though he did vastly different things throughout his entire life. There was never necessarily like one type of show that he was going after. But Dick Tracy is like really the one original movie that he wrote multiple songs
Yeah.
for that people might even recognize because they are done in cabarets a whole bunch here nowadays. But I want to know what your history is with Dick Tracy. Like, I guess before this recording, had you ever seen it? Did you know about it? Did you know the music from it at all?
I definitely heard of Dick Tracy, just being quite into Sondheim, but I never like watched the movie or really looked into many of the songs. I'd heard a couple of them before, like very much in passing. But then I sat down after I contacted you, I sat down, I watched the movie. I was like, I just didn't know I hadn't watched it before. But I really enjoyed the movie, and I thought it was. I mean, like I wasn't expecting all these, like especially like the like all the different costumes and prosthetics and stuff. I was like, oh, this is what
Yeah.
this movie
Oh,
is.
yeah. Just to fill people in, because this is the first episode of this season, just to fill in like my backstory a little bit. This is a movie I absolutely saw within a year of when it came out, because I saw this on home video. I did not see this movie in theaters. I would have been a little too young to be taken to the movie theater when this originally came out. And I remember it because this was a year after Tim Burton's Batman came out, which I was obsessed with. I thought that was so cool.
Yes.
And then this was like the next big comic book movie that was coming out and was really pitched as being like, quote unquote, like the next Batman, which ultimately I think did it a disservice more than anything else to pitch it that way. And so I remember watching it back then, and I do remember liking it, and then have never watched it since like 1991. So it's been a long time. And I have to say, like, experiencing it now as an adult, I really did enjoy my time with this movie more than I thought I would, because I would say that the prevailing critical consensus even is that it's this weird detour that Warren Beatty does in his career, because it's his follow-up to Reds, which was like this big Oscar-winning, big epic movie that he then goes to and makes Dick Tracy right after. So it's this weird like little blip in his career. Even in like the comic book fandoms, most people were like, oh no, it's a little bit too cartoony. And as far as like Disney, who helped co-finance this movie, has really buried it. Like I don't even know if it's available on Disney Plus, to be honest with you.
No, definitely not here at least.
It's not promoted very much. They don't want to have anything to do with it. This is in part why it's been so hard for Warren Beatty to make a sequel to this movie, which he did want to do. More on that, I'll just say, as far as like the legal issues with this movie, way later on, because it will derail our conversation here today. But
I didn't know there was many legal issues, but I think it's for such a strange, like especially like after like Red, like you're like, oh, there's just a lot happening, really. But it's definitely, I do find that it's quite similar to those Tim Burton Batman films, like in the stylized version of this detective story.
I will say the kind of the major criticism they'll throw at it for a film that I now want to rewatch again here later this year, because it's like, oh, I shouldn't have waited, almost 30 plus years to watch this a second time. Danny Elfman does do the score to this film, which is, it sounds very Batman-ish if you know the Batman score.
Good. I listened to the score before I actually listened to some of the songs and watched the movie, and I was like, because obviously coming from the orchestral background, I was like, let me see what happens.
Oh, sure.
But then I also found it was, I'm fairly sure it was the comment in Sondheim's book where he was like, I'm quite a slow composer, and which is why he didn't write all the music for the film, because he's like, it's a too slow composer. Yeah. They go too fast. I thought that was really funny because you've got, especially from the 60s, 70s, is pumping out a musical every 2 years. I wouldn't say that's a very slow composition process.
That is true. I mean, like, I feel like sometimes he would use that excuse if he just didn't want to do the thing. It's like, I'm too slow. I can't do that. All I was saying that I really wish, I don't know which direction I guess this goes. I wish that either Danny Elfman had really incorporated more of Sondheim's melodies into the score, or Sondheim had tried to use the score more into his compositions. Either way, they almost feel like two separate things. It's like the score pieces and then we have the songs. I don't feel that they really complement each other very well.
No, yeah. That's definitely like, it's all the songs that Sondheim writes are like diegesis. So the characters, like I'm sure you know, they're like, all the characters know that they're songs. So in a way, you get away with it because you've got all the songs in the movie which are songs, and then you've got the score which is this, like, none of the characters. Actually, that's a lie. There's one of them is a montage, which is when Dick's.
That's right.
I can't remember exactly what. Yeah, but there's a montage.
I was going to say, like, technically. Not even technically. The one that we're talking about here today is played over a montage at one point in the film. But it's still being sung on stage in front of people. I'm not
entirely sure this is correct, but I'm on the assumption that Sondheim wrote his songs first and then Elfman came in.
That's how I understand it, yes.
So, yeah, I'm not, again, don't quote me on that. But I think it would have been just Danny Elfman just going, I don't think he would have even listened to the songs. He would have just gone, this is what I think, and they're just written it down. They're gone, yep, sure.
I have these pieces that didn't work in Batman, so I'm just going to put them here. Hey everyone, just kind of breaking into the conversation to tell you about some of the people that help this show continue to go. If you'd like to help support the show for absolutely free, you can give a rating and review on whatever app you listen to podcasts in. That's greatly appreciated. Putting It Together is an independent podcast, so if you'd like to help monetarily, which will only help to grow and make this show better, you can do so over at our Patreon page. Please do not donate if it impacts you negatively financially. I would especially like to thank our new patron of Jordan. Thank you so much, Jordan, for jumping aboard the Patreon boat. But I also need to give a huge thank you to the God That's Good tier from Patreon of Alex, Barry, Christopher, David, Jack, Louise, Mika, Robert, Stephen, and Whitty. All right, let's get back to the show. Cooper, what are we talking about here today?
We're talking about a beautiful song called More. And so we see, obviously, this song at sort of 2 points in the film. So his first time is like, so you got Madonna who's playing Breathless. It's her song. But the first time it's her in the club after Alfonsi Big Boy Caprice. Yeah, I've got on the Wikipedia page because I knew I would forget. Big Boy, he's just bought the club, obviously, and he's getting it ready for the grand opening.
By the way, I adore that scene on how unhinged it is of Al Pacino in like all this big makeup, making his face look gigantic, being like, I'm going to be like so into like choreographing this scene with all the girls. Like he's in it. Like he's like, no, it's wrong. You have to have more emotion into this song. I'm like, you are wild.
I was like, I just love how he's this gangster mob dude that basically just moonlights as like director choreographer of this cabaret show.
He's doing jazz hands. He's doing everything on this stage.
And the steps. I love like the steps out that he does. It's
that's right. And then that's right.
So many random things. And then the final one is the, as you said, the montage over the sort of final big showdown, break everything happening.
Yeah, I think it's definitely during a party that's happening. I think it's supposed to be New Year's Eve, I think, is what it is. As she's singing a song, And Dick Tracy and the rest of his crew is essentially putting a bug into the headquarters.
And there's also the version that Madonna just recorded the whole way through that you can find on like Spotify,
Right.
which is the whole song, but this obviously in the movie just sort of gets split up.
Yeah, I think most of these songs, like you do hear in pieces, or like you said, like on a radio or something like that. So sometimes you're not hearing necessarily the full thing that Sondheim wrote, but we will be going through all the lyrics, I guess, that he
and you'll be able to like, obviously, I'm sure you know already, but like in the lyrics, he has like what he wanted the stage directions to sort of be. And at the end, he has that little note where he's like, but you know what? Doesn't always happen, does it?
I know he's a little bit cheeky here, but like, yes, he did actually write stage directions for this song in particular about what she's supposed to be doing, which she absolutely does not do in the movie at all. But he says like that's why you collaborate with other people. They have different ideas of what's going to happen. Well, let's get into it here then. So once upon a time, I had plenty of nothing, which was fine with me because I had rhythm, music, love, the sun, the stars, and the moon above, had the clear blue sky and the deep blue sea. That was when the best things in life were free. Then time went by and now I got plenty of plenty, which is fine with me because I still got love, I still got rhythm, but look at what I got to go with them.
Once upon a time I had plenty of nothing, which is fine with me because I had rhythm, music, love, the sun, the stars, and the moon above, had the clear blue sky and the deep blue sea. That was when the best things in life were free. Then time went by and now I got plenty of plenty, which is fine with me because I still got love, I still got rhythm, but look at what I got to go with them.
This is like the verse that sort of gets us into what the song's about. So I think I don't have this part of my music, which is a bit annoying. But it's sort of, it's really good at just teasing what this song's going to be about. Because like, what has she got to go with them? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a fun little vamp that's going underneath this, I think, too. It's like dun 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 dun, dun before we actually get into the melody of the song.
Yeah. It's not like saying too much just yet, but it's just like teasing out the little bit of, and I think the way that Madonna does in the movie, she like, especially in the first section, it's like you can tell it's like low energy, but then in the final bit, the way that she sort of performs all these lines is really, really well done. Like, especially because she's like a pop star. And you've got her singing musical theatre stuff. It's like you can tell that she's just so talented and she's just do it all.
Yeah, this is, I think, a great example of being able to take a person's talent and accentuating that talent and kind of hiding maybe things that they're not very good at. Because I don't want to be too mean, but I have seen Madonna in other film roles, which sometimes I'm like, oh, I don't know if you're able to fully hit what this character actually needs. Yeah. And I think she's pretty wonderful in Dick Tracy, but she doesn't need to.
The character is kind of her.
Yes, 1,000%, right? It's like you are kind of made to be this pop star, glamorous, breathy character, and that's exactly how she's written for this film. And as far as the songs go, too, like this is like nightclub act. Even Madonna herself says that she doesn't have like the hugest range in the world, but for what she can do, she can really nail. There's a reason why she's had hit after hit after hit on the pop charts. Like she understands how to make a pop song work, and I think she understood how to make these songs work too.
Yeah, that's actually like a really interesting thing about this song is like the highest note is the B flat at the end, and you're like, I know this is a little bit spoilers, but realistically for the female voice, that's not really that high. But yet, because she's obviously got quite a low voice, it's like the registration, the way she places that makes it sound just as intense as maybe like a higher like soprano-esque person would make a note even a bit higher, like up at an F or something. Like it's still got lots of energy, and the way she sings it is just, the way that she hits it is really good, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's the hand you're dealt, right? As a songwriter, especially when you're writing the original song for whoever's originating that role, It's like, okay, well, this is what you can do. So this is how I'm going to have to write this song. I mean, we say it so often here on this show, but there's a reason why Send in the Clowns is written the way it is, because it was written for a performer who did not who had like a 3-note range. So it's like, it has to kind of stay within these 3 notes and that's it. But yeah, you write to the performer and then you like knock out a classic.
That's the most famous pieces. Similar to a lot of the stuff that in Gypsy as well, I guess.
Oh yeah, Gypsy is another great example of writing for the performer in mind, right? Of especially with like Ethel Merman and stuff like that, who did have a bigger range, but it's like there was a very much a Ethel Merman type song you had to write for her when she was in your productions. So you had to understand how to do that. I was going to say, so I love the little wordplay that's going on here in the beginning of them commenting on each other, right? So plenty of nothing and then plenty of plenty. So it's like we're still telling this story over time. Like I started with nothing. I now have a lot. And what do I actually want now that I have a lot? Well, we're going to vote to find out, which is I want more. There's always this idea of like, I need more within this song. And
then he goes on to talk about, like, in a kind of listy way, where he talks about his favorite, well, not the favorite thing, but how he says the Oscar and Hammerstein talk about birds. He talks about the sky and the stars another time.
yeah, right. Oh, I was going to say that this is kind of stealthily is kind of a list song. It's not fully that, but it does feel like we're just listing things off here a lot the further we get into it.
I mean, there's maybe a little bit of growth, but realistically, we're sort of talking about it's a show tune. Like, there's not necessarily much character development happening in it, as with though it comes and goes with the listiness, I guess.
No, it's true. Like, we have someone who is a fairly vapid character singing a vapid song. Like, that's kind of, like, there isn't a huge amount of character growth in this, nor does it need to be, right? This is not a musical in the standard sense of like this song is being used to progress the story forward or do this like truth or something, this hidden truth within inside of a character. This is really just dressing within this film of a nightclub act. And yes, it is still commenting on the themes of the movie, but it's not there to drive the plot forward either. So I think Sondheim, you also understood, like, I understand my role inside of like this film.
That's why he's Sondheim.
So to continue on here, she continues singing, who could ask for anything more? I hear you query. Who could ask for anything more? Well, let me tell you, dearie. Got my diamonds, got my yacht, got a guy I adore. I'm so happy with what I've got. I want more.
Who could ask for anything more? I hear you query. Who could ask for anything more? Well, let me tell you, dearie. Got my diamonds, got my yacht, got a guy I adore. I'm so happy with what I got. I want more.
You can definitely hear in this section one of the many influences that Sondheim used to write this song. He actually lists them out in more detail in the section after this song, but who could ask for anything more is like literally directly quoted. It's even the same melody that she sings.
I got rhythm. I got music. I got my gal. Who could ask for anything more? I got Daisy. I got in green pastures. I got my gal. Who could ask for anything more? Old man trouble.
But you also have, I'll just read out the ones that he notates here. There's I got plenty of nuttin', I got the sun in the morning, the best things in life for free, and I got rhythm. Those are kind of the big ones that you can hear sprinkled throughout this entire song.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he especially because he writes about it in his book, that he's listening to all these other people that are composing it who's come before him. And I think that the influence, because that became such a I Got Rhythm, sorry, we're talking about I Got Rhythm, became such a jazz standard. It's kind of, it's well used because this is kind of like a jazz club, almost what it is, but not quite. So it's like audiences going, especially audiences would have probably known because they've heard it from one of the many, many jazz singers that sang it. They're going, this is jazz. This is what people sing at these clubs, which is, again, him just knowing what to do and just delivering.
I guess the point I'll reiterate here is this a time and a place and a feeling that needs to be communicated pretty quickly and kind of in the background. This song is a little bit different in that we actually see them do that rehearsal scene. So we've kind of heard some of the song already, so that when we revisit it later on in the film and we kind of see the polished version, it's like, oh, I remember this song. This is the song that they were rehearsing at the beginning with Al Pacino doing like jazz hands and all that kind of stuff. So, but there's also the familiarity with like phrases or simple melodies and stuff like that, where it's like, oh yeah, like you said, like jazz club, cool,
Yeah.
got it. I don't need to do any heavy lifting. It just sounds like what would be in a jazz club, at least the movie version of a jazz club.
And it's also, as not many Sondheim songs are always, it's a pretty hummable tune. I mean, we got a bit of range, but I mean, most people can go dun 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 dun. Like they can sing along or hum along.
And for you, I was just going to ask, like, you have the music there in front of you too. Like, I don't know if there's anything specifically from the music that you wanted to call out.
Not too much. It's essentially like it's the vamp from that we start with is pretty much just like tonic dominance, and it's nothing too crazy. And this is pretty similar, but we're extending the chords. So I've got some, like the chords I've got up is pretty much just B flat 6, F minor 7, flat 5, and then F9. So all of this is like B flat is our home note. So that's where we're comfy, and then she's essentially just singing a nice melody over the top of that. So it's nothing too crazy. She doesn't sing the B flat too often, which is kind of like she's suggesting that she's never sort of comfy. Like we do obviously see quite a few B flats in it, but she doesn't really hit many until a little bit where it's later, where it's like long as it's more, which is like the first time we feel, bang, this is where we are.
The one thing I will call out here that, Sondheim mentions about whatever happens, within our brains, there's just something that, I don't know, tickles us, I guess. I don't know how the best way to verbalize it. It is 6 a.m. where I'm at currently, but, is when you rhyme two words that are spelled differently, right? It's one way to spell like cat and hat, right? So they both end in AT. So it's like our brains are like, oh yeah, of course, like those two things rhyme. There's another one when they still rhyme, but they're spelled vastly differently, which is yacht and got in this small section here. And I always think that's so fun.
It's still that perfect rhyme. It's not exactly an I rhyme, but essentially a lot in poetry, it's like you rhyme the way two words look. It's kind of like the reverse of that. Essentially what an I rhyme would be is like love and then move. So when you see them on the page, they look the same.
Yes.
But it's kind of like the inverse of that, where we hear it's the same, but when you look at it, it's the opposite. It's not the same at all. Goods and bads are like taking poetry and then making it musical. But like there's different things that we can do that like poetry by itself can't. And he finds a way to make it like sort of cross really well.
You know what the most fun example of that is? Have you ever watched Evening Primrose, the other Sondheim like TV show musical that he wrote?
I've not watched it yet, no. But I'd love to hear the example.
If you're listening sequentially to the podcast, you will eventually get there.
Yeah, I've still got a few, I'm sure.
Because I'm going to forget what I'm going to literally just now blank on what they are. He's a poet, like that's the main character. He thinks he's a poet, but subtly throughout, it's shown that he's not actually a very good one. Like he thinks he's better than what he is. And so the whole musical starts with him using 3 words that if you looked at them should rhyme, but they don't. I always think that that's such a subtle, cool thing that Sondheim puts, because it's like, anyways, when you get to that section or to those songs, I think it's such a fun way to start that musical. So we continue on, and Breathless sings, count your blessings, 1, 2, 3. I just hate keeping score. Any number is fine with me as long as it's more. And then the chorus kind of kicks in here too. As long as it's more. I'm no mathematician. All I know is addition. I found counting a bore. Keep the number mounting. Your accountant does the counting. And then the girls are in the background going more, more as she continues on.
Count your blessings, 1, 2, 3. I just hate keeping score. Any number is fine with me, as long as it's more. As long as it's more. I'm no mathematician. All I know I'm counting a ball. Keep the numbers mounting, your accountant does the counting.
Again, it's coming back to that sort of list vibe where we're talking about a very similar thing. But this time we're talking about it in numbers. Like before we were talking about like the diamonds, the yachts, we're talking about physical stuff. And now it's like, count your blessings. And then we're talking about, I'm the mathematician, which again, didn't realize mathematician and addition rhymed until I was like, oh, there you go. I mean, like, in the back of my head, I'm sure I did.
I like how
the fact that he puts it all together.
I am 1,000% convinced like Sondheim told her to do it this way, but I am semi-obsessed with how Madonna says mathematician. It's mathematician. Like she goes like, it's a weird way she phonetically says it.
It's, yeah, I don't know. There's always like these different things that like, it's like with the way you just sort of accent different parts of the beat. It's also sort of plays into that mathematician bit. Also plays in a little bit to the accenting of that plays into the sort of the beat we've got under it, the sort of rhythm, which is like the bum 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 bum, which it lines up really well with that, which is kind of a little fun thing. And it's definitely like, I mean, especially as a performer, it's like something you sort of, as it's part of your work with a song, you got to look at where, like, what notes you're highlighting. Like in the Sondheim, you don't really change rhythms. Well, hopefully you're not changing rhythms too much. But what you can do is like, or notes. I mean, especially in like more modern songs where it's more spoken, you can definitely have that sort of freedom.
Yeah.
But like, especially like golden age and like pre-70s, I guess we sort of, it's sort of become, it's essentially like golden age is pre-56, but it sort of gets extended over the years to now it's kind of pre-70s.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say like I wasn't gonna say anything, but because you just expanded on that, I feel that the term golden age now is like, I don't even know what that means, and I don't think anyone does anymore, because if you read books that were written on the subject in the 90s, they say this is what the golden age is, and I feel like it gets longer and longer as I get older myself. It's like what encompasses the golden age of musicals.
Yeah, I think it's just we see a lot more variation now. Not to put down, especially a lot of the older guys, but essentially back then it was a lot of middle-aged white dudes writing music, and so a lot of them had similar education, similar backgrounds. So a lot of the way through we have similar sounding music, whereas now it's not 100% not perfect, but it's so much better now, and there's so much more inclusion, and everything is like, especially minorities and people from different backgrounds are better supported. And so because of that, we have a lot more our repertoire, and I feel like there's also just a lot more shows that have been produced in the last couple of years. Like, I don't know for certain if I'm just talking out my butt, but especially like we have, like, especially at that time, there was no such thing as an Australian musical.
Right, yeah, that's true.
Whereas now you have,
I know there's been a few that have transferred.
Quite a few.
Boy from Oz, obviously, is the one of the big ones, but there's another one I'm forgetting.
Strictly Ballroom. I don't know if that ever went to Broadway though.
Two things to touch on here before we move on. First, just to tie up this bow, I had to look it up, or else it was going to bug me. So the Evening Primrose, what the first things that are kind of spoke sung is it done? Are they gone? Am I alone? So it's done, gone, alone, all end in O-N-E, and all are pronounced differently. So it's like, from the very beginning, this is a poet who doesn't really know how to rhyme things. So I think that's really fun. The last thing I was going to say is, like, as we go through this song, the things that rhyme with more, that are just thrown into it. So we've already had score, bore, and four.
It's definitely like the main rhyme, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, this is going to be a bigger section I'm going to read out here now. So, Breathless continues on. I got rhythm, music too, just as much as before. Got my guy and my sky of blue. Now, however, I own the view. More is better than nothing true, but nothing's better than more. Nothing's better than more. One is fun, why not two? And if you like two, might as well have four. And if you like four, why not a few? Why not a slew? More. If you've got a little, why not a lot? Add a bit and it'll get to be an oodle. Every jot and tittle adds to the pot. Soon you've got the kit as well as the caboodle. More.
I got rhythm, music too, just as much as before. Got my guy Now, however, I own the view. More is better than nothing true, but nothing's better than more. Nothing's better than more. One is fun, why not two? And if you like two, might as well have four. And if you like four, why not a few? Why not a slew more? If you got a little, why not a lot? Add a bit and it'll get to be a noodle. Every jot and tittle adds to the pot. Soon you got the kid as well as the caboodle.
It's way better when Madonna does it than me reading it out. But there's.
I think that was quite amazing. This? I enjoyed that.
Thank you.
We've got, again, we're just repeating a lot of the stuff, so not too much to say. I kind of like I don't know I feel like an oodle it's like a measurement of something.
I guess I should look at that, but maybe there is like an actual like real term. I've always had it just mean lots, a slang term for meaning lots.
And then that rhyme with caboodle is just the kit and caboodle, like you just
another nonsense word I will just say, but yes.
Yeah, but like it's just obscure nonsense, but it actually like it fits because I've definitely heard my parents and older people say kit and caboodle. Never know what that
all the
meant,
time.
But
I've heard that all through my life. And then I thank you for saying this because even growing up, I'm like, but what is it? No one could tell me what it was.
Until I saw the lyrics, I thought it was like kitten, like the animal, kitchen caboodle.
Oh,
I thought it was like a type of cat, and I was like, why are we?
That's hilarious.
And then I saw this, I was like, oh, what?
I think we just stumbled across our next great comic strip. It's Kit and Caboodle, Feline Detective. We'll make $1 billion.
Absolutely. But the fact that he extends it out to Kit as well as the caboodle, it kind of feels like it's kind of like when you got to reach the word count in an assignment, you just add instead of and you go as well as, which I think is kind of funny.
Yeah, I mean, it's just fun little like wordplay and some rhymes are going on here, right? It's just part and parcel of how well he was at writing pastiche, because the longer it goes on, does feel very much like, oh yeah, this is like a song from the 1930s, something that was being written in Tin Pan Alley, being performed here in the jazz club. In a similar way, I think, although I will say I like this other song more, but the song New York, New York from the movie New York, New York, which floored me when I discovered years after, like, oh, that isn't a song from the 1930s. That was something that was written in the 1970s to sound like it came from the 1930s. It's a similar thing here. It was like a lot of this score feels like it was written way earlier than what it actually was.
Yeah, great song as well, New York, New York. I've played that many times in big bands, and it never gets old.
We have 2 sections left that I'm going to go through here. So, never say when, never stop at plenty. If it's going to rain, let it pour. Happy with 10, happier with 20. If you like a penny, wouldn't you like many, much more? Or does that sound too greedy? That's not greed, no indeedy. That's just stocking the store. Gotta fill your cupboard. Remember Mother Hubbard. More.
Never say when, never stop at plenty. If it's gonna rain, let it pour. Happy with 10, happier with 20. If you like a penny, wouldn't you like many, much more? Or does that sound too greedy? That's not greed. Ooh, no indeedy. That's just stocking the store. Gotta fill your cupboard, remember Mother Hubbard.
I also didn't know what Mother Hubbard was, so I had to I was listening to go through the lyrics. I looked up, it's a nursery rhyme, but I was like, this is not.
It's a nursery rhyme.
This is. I've never heard of it. Not a thing in Australia, I guess. And I was also thinking, especially going back a little bit. One is fun, why not 2? If you like 2, you might as well have 4. That rhyme there, that lyric there, just kind of reminded me of. There's a lyric from Carousel. The one, it's the Enoch So sings it. He's talking about how he's going to have all these. If I had 1 little boat and then 2 little boats and then a great big fleet, and he's talking about he's like how he's going to make the sardine factory. I was like, I don't know if he intended that to be a little homage to that, but I was like, that's kind of fun.
I always assume that there's probably some sort of allusion, just again, because of how much Oscar Hammerstein was an influence on him. I'm sure whenever he finds a way to like work it in, that he has these subtle allusions to that previous work. Just for people who don't know, just because you mentioned you didn't, the very quick thing is Mother Hubbard had bare cupboards. Like that's the whole joke here, is that she had nothing in her cupboards to feed her children. So it's like, we don't remember her whose cupboards were bare. I don't want that to happen to me. I want them full of stuff.
I remember the song. It's from When the Children Are Asleep.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Oh, I was going to say, absolutely, Sondheim was not referencing this. I will 1,000% say. But there is a song that's included in Snoopy, the musical, which also starts off very similar. It's like, even if one person believes in you, why not two? And then if two, why not four? And if four, why not more? Like it keeps going on and on. Anyways, it just reminded me of that song, a song that Sondheim is absolutely not referencing.
I think you're right. I think it's 100%. It's 100% from that.
He was a big Snoopy fan. So she sings, each possession you possess helps your spirits to soar. That's what's soothing about excess. Never settle for something less. Something's better than nothing, yes, but nothing's better than more, except all, except all. Except once you have it all, you may find all else above. That though things are bliss, there's one thing you miss, and that's more.
Each possession you possess helps your spirits to soar. That's what's soothing about excess. Never settle for something less. Something's better than nothing, yes, but nothing's better than more. Except all. Except once you have it all. You may find all else above. That though things are bliss, there's one thing you miss, and that's more.
I think it's interesting on the lyric. I mean, this is just sort of something that you get from like, especially listening to a lot of music theater songs. You start to expect on like those big words like soar, like you're singing spirits to soar. You expect it to go pretty high, but that's actually not. Like it's pretty in the middle, especially even for that phrase. So I can say the notes, but not everyone will know the notes. But essentially it goes from D sharp and then to an E and then an F sharp, which is spirit. So it goes, helps your spirits to soar. So it doesn't actually go back up to that high note where we expect it. So it just sort of like, he just holds off and giving you that like sort of relief from the high note. Look, that's not even the high note really, till we get to the big finale where we get the more, when she's just belting it out.
There's a weirdness of this song, at least from my interpretation. People can write in if they disagree with this, but I think there's these three different things that are actually happening within this song. And by just reading the lyrics, I don't think pick up on at least one. So she's talking about her life and about like, she always craves more, right? Like she's never satisfied. She always wants something else in her life. And so I think Sondheim needs to bring in this almost like bit of melancholy into this at the end. It's like, right, you don't get that big payoff in when she sings soar and these other sections. It always feels like she's being performative in this. It's like, yeah, I need more, I want more. But there's a sadness, I think, that's tinged to this song that doesn't necessarily bleed through when you just read the lyrics out by themselves.
No,
and ultimately also this character, as we have, spoiler alert for a whatever it is, almost 40-year-old movie at this point, that is also her undoing. Like her quest for more ultimately leaves her with nothing.
Yeah.
So I think there is like this like cautionary tale that's being thrown into this as well.
Do we spoil that who she is at the end, or do we not?
Yeah, if you haven't watched the movie, go watch the movie. Just so I even saw the movie, like I said, when I was a kid, and I had forgotten the twist at the end. So that was actually a surprise to me. Like, oh yeah, that's right. She's the big bad. She's the person that's the faceless man throughout the entire thing.
Yeah, I think that's like this song actually does work that double meanings you're saying, where she's singing about how she wants to be, but like when we view it for most of the movie, especially the 2 times we actually see it in the movie, we're just like, oh, she's just singing the show tunes, pardon me. So she's singing show tune, and you're like, oh, okay, fair enough. It's great. And then when she, spoiler alert, go watch the movie, haven't already, when she unmasks herself as the main villain that's actually controlling it all, you're like, oh, so she was like putting herself in that situation when she didn't really need to. But the song works as like kind of what her character was feeling.
The more of it is that we're focusing on like the stuff, like the material things. She is the material girl, I guess. This is why they cast her throughout this song. But really what her yearning is for freedom. Like that's what the more is that she wants.
Yeah, and also I think, I mean, like literally the reason why she was unmasked is because she was wanting Dick Tracy to join her side. So she was like, I think she wanted to control everything and like just be that person that didn't have to worry about anything. And sorry, as I was saying, it was about the musical side. In this final, like this each possession you possess, we go up by a semitone. So, I mean, it's very common in basically every single songwriter, every single type of song where we go, when you ascend, it gets more exciting and it gets more, believe it or not. So I think it's when we get to that end, we're like very much feeling that it's bigger and more.
It's more. Well, this has been great. Thank you so much for joining me here this week, Cooper. There's a few different things that I think we should touch on here. I guess I should just even ask the question, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you think we should?
I think so. I think we covered most of the song. Definitely go listen to the actual version if you haven't, well, not the actual version, but the version where it's just sung basically straight through, because I think that's, as a song itself, you can hear it a little bit easier than watching the parts in the movie. But I think, it's actually back again. I think the song that I knew more from the song is Sooner or Later, which is probably the bigger one. But I think this song itself is like, it actually works on so many different levels that just listen to it by yourself you don't expect, which is where Sondheim comes into play, because he just writes so well for all these different themes and just includes little Easter eggs throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, I know that it's a form of Stockholm syndrome, because every time I start to like analyze a score or like listen to a song over and over again, it starts to become something I really love. I've liked Sooner or Later for years and years. It's always been one of my favorites. This is very quickly rising up the more I've been listening to it, and especially seeing it in the movie, and then listening back. It's like, no, there's a lot of cool things that are going on both musically and like thematically within this song that I think are easy, I guess, to not just miss but not absorb on first listen.
Absolutely, yeah. But it's been great getting to meet you and sort of see the behind the scenes.
I'm an actual person. And 2 last questions to wrap up. Number 1, I pick an original question to end off each season with. So because we are talking about Dick Tracy, a very long running comic strip, I'm wondering, Cooper, if you have a favorite comic strip. And if not a strip, then a comic book would also work. But
absolutely. Oh, this is a good question. I'm going to give 2 answers, which you may or may not know. So this is just because I've always, like, my grandparents have always had them. But there's the Bruins, which is like Irish or Scottish, and then Asterix and Obelisk. Okay. I love that as well.
Asterix and Obelisk I know quite well. I don't know the first one at all.
It's like, also you may not know this one, but it's similar to like Or Willie, which is another like Scottish or Irish one.
Nope.
I think it's just because my family come over from there. But like we had like the collected books that I used to read like every Christmas off my grandparents' house. So I think it's a bit of nostalgia.
Cool. I'm going to look those up now and just see. Maybe I know them visually and not by name. But last question is then, if people wanted to stay in contact with you, see what you're up to online, what's the easiest way to do so?
So I'm up on just Instagram, probably send me the easiest. So it's just cooper.williams. I think it's got 3 L's because, believe it or not, it's a pretty common name. But yeah, definitely if you're are in and around Perth, come check out She Loves Me. We're playing in about August, I think. So I'm ensemble and playing some of the trumpet parts for that
great.
because it's got some really good trumpet lines. I was like, please let me play. And then next year, there's a few big productions, but if you're in and around Perth, definitely come check out. But just, follow me up there. Also, like Facebook and stuff, if you just follow me there. I just post about stuff randomly every now and then.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much.
Well, it's lovely meeting you. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much for listening. You can send emails to puttingittogetherpodcast@gmail.com. You can also follow Sondheim Podcast on Twitter or Instagram. This is an independent production, and you can support the show on Patreon by going to patreon.com/puttingittogetherpodcast. Putting It Together is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and pretty much anywhere else you get podcasts from. Consider subscribing so that you never miss an episode. Next week, we're going to be talking about the song Live Alone and Like It, or the phrase I try to convince myself is true each and every week. As always, a big thank you to the great Chris Taniguchi, who designed the podcast artwork, and to Nick Driscoll for composing our theme music. Well, we've reached the end of our episode. Yes, I know. Goodbye for now.